that was about 5 minutes of what I was going to talk about. I was going to introduce myself. How many people are pitching tomorrow? Excellent. So I want to start with one of my favorite cautionary pitching tales. It's about a very talented writer who had an out-of-body experience. She had a great idea for a television series. She had a studio attached. She had a director interested. She was virtually golden. Except when she went into the network to pitch, she started talking, and then she started rambling, and she couldn't stop talking, and the executive to whom she was pitching, eyes started to glaze over, and almost fell asleep right there in the room. And she said to me afterwards, I could hear myself talking, and I kept shouting in my head, stop, stop, but I couldn't stop. I had a similar experience, but from a different perspective. My first job in the business was as an assistant to 2 writer-producers. They were very successful, and they were good pitchers. And I was just a junior level executive, but they took me into the meetings with them because one of them, when he started talking, couldn't stop talking. And so we developed this very subtle, or not so subtle, signal. I go like that. And when I did that, he knew it was time to wrap it up. So that's what we're going to talk about today, which is what you can do to not do those things, to make your project, your pitch, focused, better, killer. All great pitches have 2 things in common. Does anybody know what they are? Any ideas?
They're short.
They are short.
They're short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Short and sweet is part of it. They hook you emotionally. They totally hook you emotionally, and then they leave you wanting more. They're tantalizing. So here's 5 secrets to a killer pitch. 1, make a personal connection. 2, hook them emotionally by telling them a personal story from your life of why you're involved in this project. Log line. 3, short, sweet, seductive. 4, am I going too fast? Yes. Number 2, an important one. Hook them emotionally by telling a personal story about how you came up with the idea. So I'll go back for 1 second. 1, make a personal connection. 2, hook them emotionally by telling a personal story about how you came up with the idea. 3, a short, sweet, and seductive log line. Not porno, but seductive. Well, maybe you're here. I don't know. How many people are pitching porno? Maybe this is the wrong place.
So the better question is, do you pitch porno?
That is a question I cannot answer. You will have to go to the powers that be for that one. Okay, so 3 is that log line.
What was the last one that you gave?
3 is log line, short, sweet, and seductive, without being porno. 4, talk about the tone, setting, and if you have time, give a little more background on the antagonist. So tone, setting, and the antagonist. And 5 is ask for questions and feedback. So let's talk about number 1, which is take a beat and make a genuine personal connection. When you go in and talk to them, I want you to shake their hand, make eye contact, and give them a genuine smile as if you were actually interested in meeting them as opposed to desperate to sell them something. How many of you know who you're going to be pitching to? When will you know who you're going to be pitching to? Or you don't know?
We haven't been told.
You haven't been told. When? Do you know when they're going to tell them?
Well, you take a look at the
Oh, you pick out who you're going to pitch to. Okay, this is great. Because another way, a great way to make a personal connection is that you do your homework on these people. So decide who you want to pitch to, Google them, and see if there's one thing you could say to them that's complimentary about their work or about their company or about their projects. Don't be stalkery. Just be complimentary. So you're going to say hi, you're going to have the genuine eye contact, you're going to say something nice about their project. Not everybody, in fact, mostly nobody that's going to come in is going to do that. So what you want to do is be memorable, as well as have your project be memorable. 2, hook them emotionally immediately by starting your pitch with a story from your life. And I hope everybody's going to practice. You have about a minute to tell this story. So you want to practice it so you know what you're going to say in a minute. About what personal, vulnerable thing in your life led you to do this project, to be passionate about this project. For instance, does everybody know who Vince Gilligan is? Vince Gilligan is the creator of Breaking Bad. And this is a story he told when he went into pitch. How many people know Breaking Bad? Great, okay. I would be surprised if people didn't know about Breaking Bad. So he used to be on X-Files, and when he left that show was over, he couldn't get another job. He was unemployed for quite a while, and he was sitting around with his friend, another unemployed writer, and they started to say to each other, well, what are we going to do if we don't get a gig? And Vince said, you know what? I'm going to get an RV and go around and sell crystal meth. And they laughed about that, and then they went on to another topic. But Vince started to think about that character, and he started to become obsessed with that character. And that was the basis for his show. So when he went in to pitch it, he talked about sitting there with his friend. He talked about how this character captured his imagination. He pitched the story as Mr. Chips turns into Scarface. And the thing was, every single network that he pitched to, except AMC, passed on it. One executive said, that is the worst idea for a television show I've ever heard. Now that guy's probably not working anymore, because Breaking Bad went on to be one of the most highly acclaimed series that's ever been on television. Here's another story that's a personal story. Carol Barbie, who's currently on Falling Skies as an executive producer, created a show called 3 Rivers. And this is how she went into pitching. And it's a true story. She had an uncle, a really beloved uncle, who was sick, and he was getting sicker, and he needed a liver transplant. And he was on the transplant list, but he was not moving up the transplant list. And he was starting to get worse and worse. And they were afraid they were going to lose him. And finally, he made it to the top of the list, but there wasn't an organ for him. And he was fading fast. And then they got a call from a doctor who said, there is a liver, it's up in Alaska, I'm going to go get it, and I will be back in enough time. Took him 2 days. He took a regular flight and then a little tiny flight, and he got to Alaska. He picked up the organ, he put it in an ice chest, he brought it back, he did the surgery, it was successful, her uncle survived and is doing well. And the series she pitched was about those doctors. It was called 3 Rivers, and it was on CBS. So did you hear how that sort of hooked you emotionally? You were interested in that story? I hope so. That's what you want to do. You want to tell that story, your version of that story. Now, a question I get asked a lot in seminars is, you know what, I've got a show about a zombie, but I am not related to any zombies, and I don't have any personal stories about zombies. Well, one of my clients had a show that she practically sold in the room, and it was a ghost story. and this is the basis for it. This is how she got the inspiration. Her parents hated each other. And she talked about how much her parents hated each other, and she said, and they got divorced, and she said that her mom developed stage 4 cancer. And her mom said to her daughter, to my client, I want you to call your father and tell him I'm sick. So she called her father to tell him how sick her mother was, and she came back, and her mother said, did you tell him? And he said, yeah. She said, yeah. And she said, was he sad? And she said, of course. And she said, good. So that's the idea that she came up with for a show about a female detective who's 3 days away from ending a bitter divorce when she gets murdered. And the only way that she can go on to the next plane of existence is to figure out who murdered her. And that was the show. The ghost detective and her husband. So, I just want to tell you a couple of different pitches. I want to tell you the worst pitch I've ever heard. Are you interested in that? Yes. Okay. Most people are. I was in comedy at CBS, and these guys came in, and they pitched a raucous comedy, a sitcom, set in Abraham Lincoln's White House. And we were stunned. We said, yeah, except his wife was mentally ill, his son died, and he got assassinated. Where is the comedy in that? It is truly one of the worst pitches I've ever heard. Now, I actually couldn't believe they were serious, but they really were. The good thing about that is I have a story to tell about the worst pitch I ever heard. Okay, and the best one was about a TV news reporter who gets out of rehab and has to get her personal and professional life back on track. And we bought that in the room. Does anybody know what show that was? Murphy Brown. Anybody seen Murphy Brown? Thank you for those 4 people. Okay, number 3, log line. Short, sweet, seductive. I'm going to give you a very simple formula for a killer log line, and I want you to write this down. Adjective, verb, noun. Okay, next to adjective, write protagonist. And next to verb, write conflict. And next to noun, write goal. So it's adjective, protagonist, verb, conflict, noun, goal. So when you talk about your protagonist, you need what I call very muscular adjective. It needs to be powerful, needs to be emotionally impactful and instantly recognizable. Here's some examples. Driven, desperate, brilliant, troubled, arrogant, irresponsible. When I say those words, does it conjure a picture for you? That's the kind of adjective you need for your protagonist. Then conflict is the verb, and needs to be a powerful verb, because the conflict is what makes people buy tickets or tune in to watch you, or go online to watch your show. Here's some powerful verbs. Transforms, seeks, pursues, battles, overcomes. Okay. So your noun, the goal. The goal is, what does your protagonist want or need? And here's some examples. Revenge, love, victory, esteem, or power. And I'm going to give you some examples and see if you can figure out what project this is from. A determined young woman seeks revenge on those who wronged her family. Revenge. How many people watch Revenge? Oh, come on, more of you watch Revenge. An emotionally fragile young man moves home to reconcile with his ex-wife, but ends up falling in love with an equally fragile young woman. Exactly. A down on her luck maid of honor, has to overcome her stubbornness as she faces one ridiculous disaster after another. A driven CIA agent pursues a man she's sure is a terrorist. Homeland, great. A mild-mannered science teacher diagnosed with cancer transforms into a criminal and ends up heading a drug empire. Breaking Bad. Very good. Okay, then you talk about the tone and setting. It's really important. I've worked with people and they don't know what the tone is. What the people you're pitching to, they want to know what the tone is. That's really important. Excuse me. If it's a television drama, is it Breaking Bad or is it Parenthood? If it's a television comedy, is it The Big Bang Theory, or as I like to say, 2.5 Broke Girls? Or is it New Girl? If it's a feature drama, is it The Great Gatsby, or is it Zero Dark 30? If it's a feature comedy, is it Hangover 3 or Silver Linings Playbook? So why don't you take a minute and just jot down what the tone is of your project, of your pitch. It's Silver Linings Playbook meets 3.5 Men. My problem with that is that it's really lazy and it doesn't say anything. What it says is this popular movie and that popular movie. You need to be able to talk about, it's okay to use an example of a show or a movie to describe what the tone is. It's in the same vein as Bridesmaids. It's the same kind of adventure as Zero Dark 30. But then you have to have a logline that isn't. It's Zero Dark 30 meets Silver Linings Playbook. Okay, setting. This is important. A lot of people, they know the tone, but they don't know the setting. Is it a glamorous enclave in the Hamptons during the 20s? Is it a hipster loft in New York? Is it a working class neighborhood in the Midwest? Is it the CIA headquarters in Washington? How many people know what the setting is? Okay, write down what you think the setting is if you don't know exactly. That's important to know by tomorrow. Okay. All right. Okay. Then antagonists. So we have your tone, your setting, your antagonist. Here's some words for an antagonist. Ruthless, cunning, emotionally damaged, evil is one. I left out one of my favorite examples of a logline. May I read it? Okay. Brash but brilliant industrialist, Tony Stark. Who's Tony Stark? Iron Man. Battles an enemy whose reach knows no bounds. Brilliant and brash. Battles. Okay. Ruthless, knows no bounds. Back to the antagonist. Cunning, a suspected terrorist. Emotionally damaged, the emotionally damaged young woman. 5, we're back to the secrets. 5, wrap it up with a question and ask for feedback. And here is an insider tip that I always talk about at Pitchfest. Most people don't do it, but the ones that do actually have good results, which is when you go in, instead of, smile and then say, I'm not here to sell you anything. And here's the reason why. How many of you have had a salesman come up to you and gotten in your face and said, okay, well, I think that you're going to love this bracelet. It's a great bracelet. It looks beautiful on you. You're beautiful. They've had 15 people up in their face doing that. If you say, I'm not here to sell you anything, I would just like to get your feedback, you put them at ease. You disarm them. And here is the truth, I promise you. People never believe me, but I promise you. You say, I'm not here to sell you anything. I would just love to get your feedback. You pitch your project the way we talked about it, and say, I'd love to get your feedback. Here is the truth. If they are interested in your idea, they will want to hear more. They will ask for backup. They will want to continue the discussion. Just because you say, I'm not here to sell you anything, doesn't mean they're not listening. Because if you pique their interest, they will be interested in buying it from you, even though you said, I'm not here to sell you anything. And only do that at Pitchfest. If you have a pitch meeting that you're going into, it's like a 30-minute pitch meeting, don't start by saying, I'm not here to sell you. Okay, so here's the principles of a great pitch. Hook your listener emotionally, tantalize them and leave them wanting more. Make a personal connection. Hook them emotionally by telling a personal story. Do a short, sweet, seductive logline with the protagonist and adjective, conflict, verb, goal, noun. Talk about the tone, setting, and the antagonist. Ask for questions and feedback. I was in Australia recently with Jen Grisanti and Glenn Mazzara, and I did workshops on writing for television and on pitching. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, you know, everybody talks about how to give a great pitch, but nobody says what not to do. So I'm going to tell you what not to do. I came up with 10 ways to murder a pitch. 1, memorize it to within an inch of its life. Don't veer off, no matter what. Being stiff and wooden is an added plus. 2, avoid eye contact. Look down at your notes or the floor the entire time. 3, dive right in and give a long list of every character's name, first and last, and a boring description. John Smith, dentist. Mary Jones, orthodontist. 4, leave out the tone and setting. 5, say something offensive about women, men, or minorities. 6, give as many minute, unimportant details as possible while avoiding the big picture. 7, keep talking, especially when you see their eyes glaze over. 8, rush through as quickly as possible so that nobody understands what you're saying. 9, tell lots of dry facts. At no time should you tell an engaging, emotional story. 10, explain in an uninformed way why this is going to be great. Those are the 10 things to do to murder your pitch. 5 minutes, okay. And I want to leave us time to have a couple of questions. So, some final thoughts. Just remember, everybody is nervous. You get a pass on it. So don't get too stressed out about it. I have a friend that taught me this, and it's fantastic, which is be committed, but don't be attached. Be committed to doing a great job, a great pitch, but don't be attached to the outcome. If they buy it, awesome. If they don't, it's not the right person yet. Think about Vince Gilligan and all the places that he went to that they passed on. Be committed, but not attached. Before you start tomorrow, take a deep breath. Say the word calm in your head. So take a deep breath, say the word calm, and then sit down and do a killer pitch. That's it. Questions?